Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Caleb Slayton, Drew Barton, and Cam Rio will be joining us soon. Apparently, he's come up lame with a physical injury. This has been our first episode. Let's see, I had surgery 9 weeks ago, so it's probably our first episode in 10 weeks. And that wasn't by design. We hope to get a few in there. I had no idea it was going to take me this long to recover, but I'm back. Everybody's back, and this is also the last episode of season 3. So I apologize that we had such a long, unanticipated break, but we're back. So, gentlemen, Caleb? How have you been? How's your summer been so far?
It's been good. I feel like teachers' summers go a lot faster than people think.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 7 weeks, maybe 8. Luckily for me, I'm leaving in 2 weeks to spend the last 3 weeks of the summer in Europe.
Nice.
So I'm like, my whole summer, I've been kind of just like planning, looking forward to that, enjoying the sun, playing a lot of volleyball. It's been great. Nothing to complain about here.
Right. And while we were gone, Cam was somewhere in Tasmania or somewhere. What country did he go to? Anybody know?
I thought it was Peru.
Right. Peru, Tasmania.
Yeah.
They're very similar. So, Drew, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I mean, other than just trying to, keep tabs with, everything going on in the basketball world, I'm, kind of doing the job hunt thing, still looking to kind of break down those barriers, man, get back to the Division I level.
Do you actually want that on recorded? You're on a job hunt. No, seriously, I'm asking. Do you?
I don't really care, to be honest. Nobody's
okay. Well, or is it that you know that no one listens to us?
I know that no one at work is. I actually most recently got in like a 45-minute back and forth with our assistant volleyball coach on the merits of college basketball versus the NBA, and then somehow spiraled into Rudy Gobert's value and validity of his 4 defensive play. It got pretty weird pretty fast. So not a lot going on in the summer at the school. We're transitioning to the NC 2A Division
right.
2. So
does that happen this year?
Yeah, our first year, Menlo's first year of competition.
Will you be eligible for the Division II tournament?
Unfortunately, we will not be. So
64 teams in that tournament too, or is it 68? Do you know?
I think there's 64.
Yeah, I think it's 64.
It'll be a 2-year postseason ban. So
right. My alma mater was in contention all season and then lost to Millersville twice, which was like their main competition. Twice, once in the regular season. Both of them were nail biters, like last shot games, and then lost in the D2 or no, the conference championship. So then they would have automatically gotten in. But they lost both games. So, you speak of Rudy Gobert, and I just wanted to touch on free agency. We'll be talking about free agency in the coming weeks, and we're going to be giving our off-season grades probably in August. But I just want to get your everyone's early thoughts on free agency. And the one thing that's been making me laugh every day when I update the NBA depth charts on our site is all these teams that collect 7-foot big men that never play. Like DeAndre, who's the guy, the 80-year-old guy on the Nuggets, DeAndre
Jordan.
Right. DeAndre Jordan. The Heat just signed Kevin Love and Thomas Bryant, who hardly played for them last year. They still have Orlando Robinson and, of course, Bam Adebayo. And also Jovic on that team is like 6'10" and actually played a lot of center for them. It's just, what is it with these collecting 7-footers that you never use?
I think, having been around this past year on more like a basketball ops side and then there's something to be said, I think, about like big guys there's a little bit more of a streamlined development, I think, with them, or like a streamlined role with them, where like they just have to really finish around the rim, be able to kind of rebound and be able to kind of make life difficult for finishers. And that is a lot less hard to find than finding like a lead guard who has to initiate an offense
Right.
or a shooter who has to consistently be able to hit at a high clip. And so I think you just can stockpile that position very easily. I mean, like in college, our team this year, we had our 6'9" center was our all-conference NAIA All-American. Like he was the guy. And pretty much everyone behind him, our two backup bigs behind him, were just two freshmen that were 6'8", 6'9", and super raw. But in a pinch, you could throw them in a game and go, grab rebounds and stick your hands up and, make life difficult to rim. And I feel like even at the NBA, there's value to that. There's how many 7 foot, 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot human beings are on the planet? Not a lot. So if you have a few of them that have, some basketball acumen, there's value, I think, there. But it is kind of funny because then you have teams like my Warriors, who are our tallest guy on the roster is like 6'9".
Well, no, Quentin Post. When they sign him, he'll be a 7-footer. But yeah,
I also think that like roster construction and chemistry of the locker room plays a role here. Like,
for sure.
I know, like, think of Udonis Haslem with the Heat. Like, he probably sat on the Heat's bench for 3 to 4 years where he just didn't.
I think
play
longer.
A game or two game or two a season. Like, I think Kevin Love is probably a signing like that. I also, from people that I know around the team, like the DeAndre Jordan being brought back to the Nuggets is a very similar kind of just
chemistry
great
thing.
locker room chemistry guy. So I think it just depends on the team. But I think to Drew's point, like, man, how many 7-footers that can move and catch a basketball are walking around? Like, you find a couple and you probably want them as at least practice guys.
Totally. Right. And like you said, easy things you can throw him in a pinch. Like Thomas Bryant, he might not be Jokic, but you can throw him in a pinch and go, it's not that hard for him to come down with 10 points and 7 rebounds and maybe block a shot. And
definitely.
5% for one game. Season long.
Here's the one thing I've learned from doing this draft stuff since 2017 is there are so many good players out there that are somewhere between 5'11" and 6'1". They could put up 20 points a night in a heartbeat in college. And Isaiah Stevens, look at Isaiah Stevens, what a stud he has been. And he carried that team this year. They had nobody who was close to a pro prospect on that team beside him. Doesn't get drafted. I think he signed a 2-way, but I'm not even sure that's happened yet. But he's just one example of so many, little guys that just are great basketball players, but there's so many of them. There's no urgency to get them.
My go-to back in the day was always Trey Burke.
Yeah.
He was Mr. Basketball in the state of Ohio, college All-American. Like, there's a Pro-Am league back in Ohio that he shows up to, and he's like 33, 34, still the best player in the Pro-Am league with like guys playing overseas, but can't make an NBA roster because he's too small and they're a dime a dozen.
They're everywhere.
Right.
Look at this. Look at the draft. Jamal Shed is best point guard in the country, and he was a second. It wasn't even a contention. Wasn't even a conversation to be a first-round pick.
Right. There were other problems with Shed. I don't think he's ever shot better than 33% from deep in his 4 years. But anyway, let me ask you guys this: just one or two teams each. Who surprised you or impressed you the most so far? Early days free agency. Caleb, start off.
Oh man. I mean, I think it's tough to not. I'll give two teams real quick. I think it's tough to not talk about the 76ers. Obviously, like, you get the best player on the market, and I think that counts a lot. And I like some of the moves around the margin with DeAndre Drummond and Eric Gordon. I also kind of like what Golden State has done. I know their big kind of like splashy moves has been losing Chris Paul and Klay Thompson both for nothing. D'Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson. I can't remember off the top of my head. I feel like they've got another guy or two in there that kind of just like ball movers. Oh, I think they were involved in a sign and trade with Buddy Hield, which I think is just like interesting.
I think that's coming up. They're working on that.
Yeah, they're working on it. But I'll fold that in. I like a lot of those moves, and I know they lost 2 of their 3 most expensive guys, or 3 out of their 4 most expensive guys. But I think they're going to have a better basketball team this year than they did last year.
I wonder if that Buddy Hield deal is going to involve Andrew Wiggins.
Most likely. I mean, I'll second Caleb. Obviously, you know, I made the joke in the group chat, like I'm really bummed Clay's gone, but it's kind of the old Bill Belichick motto: is you let a guy go 1 year early than 1 year late, and you can make an argument Clay was probably last year was his 1 year early, and like this was maybe the year too late, but you ride out the wave with a franchise legend. But I love the moves that they've made. It kind of harkens back to what put them on the map in the first place. That those teams were really good because they had the core group and their bench was loaded with these 30 to 34-year-old guys who were tail end of the prime or entering that kind of next phase of their career that were proven contributors that they know what they're going to get. And on any given night, if they land Buddy Hield, yeah, look, he's not going to go put up 25 a night, but on any given night, he can go splash 4 or 5 threes. He fills the Klay Thompson role to a T. Klay's not the defender he was before anyway. So I won't just make this a Warriors thing. I think they've done well. It's kind of hard. There haven't been a lot of moves. I do agree with Caleb. Like, you have to give – I mean, you get Paul George to combine with Maxey and Embiid. Like, you're going all in. So you got to give the Sixers credit for making that happen because a lot of teams were in that sweepstakes.
Yep.
And it does sound like they're making some moves on the margin, but it's been a pretty quiet free agency. I mean, obviously, like the Celtics go in and secure the core, right? Like they've gone in and Max Tatum, and as everyone expected. So they kind of get a default good grade. They're going to run back probably the best, not probably the best starting 5 or 5-man rotation in the NBA. So I think we're going to see with all the first and second apron additions, I think teams are being a lot more strategic, and there's going to be a lot more like 3-team trade. I mean, the Klay Thompson deal was a 3-team sign and trade. The work, like there's some of these moves that are going to require a little bit more working to try to keep people from having to get stuck with all these new regulations. And Caleb is right, that Orlando Magic KCP pickup was sneaky for a team that could use a veteran, and I think it's time for that team to do some growing up. And KCP is the kind of guy you can grow up with him. He can lead those guys.
Right. He's a winner. Cam is with us now. Cam, how you feeling?
Ooh, feeling rough, boys. But
Isn't this the second time you've hurt your back in less than 6 months?
Yeah, I keep pinching a nerve, I think.
Yeah.
You getting old?
Well, here's the deal. You got to watch that, because when I was your age, I do help somebody move, and then I'd be hurting for the next 3 days. And then when you hit 60, you end up in the operating room. So yeah, you might want to get that looked at. But I told everyone you had gone on vacation in Tasmania. Caleb corrected me, said it was Peru. I didn't really know the difference. How was Peru, before I throw this free agency question to you?
Oh, it was sick, man. I mean, spent close to 2 weeks, a little bit over 2 weeks. Did a lot of hiking. Went to actually like the best restaurant in the world. It was cool, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, it's a very mountainous country, is it not? Is it in the Andes?
Yeah, it's in the Andes.
All right. So how'd you deal with the elevation?
Honestly, it's not like if you're from Denver, it's not different.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not that bad.
Cool. I've never been to South America. I'd like to go to Uruguay. When we had Santiago Vescovi on, the way he described it, it sounded like kind of like Italy in South America. So it sounded fun. All right. So my question to the other guys was to name 1 or 2 teams that have surprised you or impressed you in free agency. And you can include the draft into this, even though we're going to talk about the drafts in our next topic. But a couple teams overall, with their free agents, with their draft, have disappointed you or impressed you?
I mean, it's hard to say disappointed.
Well, you don't have to do that. You could take 2 teams you like.
No, yeah. I think I just think Minnesota's offseason so far has been excellent.
Yeah.
They've made some nice free agency moves. They've also, they were aggressive in the draft, which I'm sure we'll get into in more detail. Outside of that, I kind of like what the Hawks did, getting off of DeJounte Murray. I like their draft. I'm sure we'll get into more detail on their draft as well. But, it wasn't like a huge move. But I think it seems like it's probably the start of a bigger sort of string of trades for them. So
I personally am most impressed by the Knicks. They've just blown me away. I think they're going to be maybe the second best team in the NBA next year. and maybe first, because I think they have more depth now than the Celtics. The other team that's impressed me is a little off the radar because they've mostly kept their core. But the thing of it is that core is so damn young and so damn talented, is the Houston Rockets. I think the Houston Rockets go 3 deep right now, if they started the season 3 deep at every position, if you look at their depth chart. It is impressive with the players they kept, the players they've drafted, and getting the kid from Duke from Atlanta for free. That was insane. AJ Griffin. That was insane. I mean, AJ Griffin was almost a lottery pick. The Hawks just said, "Hey, Houston, you want a lottery pick? Here he is. He's 20 years old. He's washed up, according to us." That's why I didn't like what the Hawks did in the draft, because that was part of their draft. So let's move on to the draft. And wait, we're not going to talk about every team. What we're going to do is we're going to post on the website. We're going to post everybody's individual grades, our collective grade. But today we're just going to talk about the teams we like the most, in the second tier teams we like the most, and then a few teams that we really did not like what they did. So we'll start with Cam. Cam, when we look at the A region, giving the A's collectively, the group was, and let me get down there in the script, collectively we picked our top 4 teams, and the consensus was Minnesota, Utah, Memphis, and Houston in that order. So you just said you liked what Minnesota has done, so why don't you lead us off and talk about the T-Wolves?
The T-Wolves, they came in, really not having a whole lot of draft capital to begin with. And they were probably a team that a lot of people didn't expect to really get aggressive in the draft. And they did. They ended up really sending 2 future firsts to the Spurs to get up to 8 for Rob Dillingham's rights. They're at a position where they're going to be capped out in terms of free agency for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And they're really sort of making a similar move to what Denver did last year, obviously in a little bit more exaggerated way. They're going after a lottery pick with Dillingham. But I think a player that's going to fit, their timeline as Mike Conley continues to age, and a pretty worthy replacement for him, a real offensive piece. And then too, at 27, they got Terrence Shannon, who, I imagine on our board, considerably higher than 27th.
Much higher. We had him close to lottery range, if not in lottery range.
Yeah. And I think universally, he's probably around that position on people's boards, but, he's had kind of an interesting end to his college career with some legal troubles, which now seem to be pretty much off the hook.
Case was dismissed. Yeah.
Yep. So I still think that had a
and I will say
had a lot to do with why
the
he went so
the
low.
media with that story really kind of ran with it and made it seem like it was far different than what happened. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm not saying what he did was right or didn't, because I don't know if he did it. The case was dismissed.
It definitely got sensationalized, I would say.
Yes,
sure.
Yes. It was made to sound a lot worse. Even if he did do it, to me, there are degrees of bad, and they made him sound really bad. And,
but I mean, regardless, they pretty much came into the draft with nothing, with 1 pick outside the lottery, and came out with 2 guys that I could see, being a major part of their rotation in the next 2 years.
Right away, I think.
Yeah. With Shannon probably more so than Dillingham, but yeah, it's a really great pair of players.
Right. So, Drew, you gave Utah Jazz an A. Collectively, we gave them an A. What did you like about the Jazz's draft? They had 3 picks.
I think the number one thing is you just look at the value, on this show and just in general. I mean, we were talking about Kyle Filipowski at Duke as a low-end lottery guy potentially last year, first rounder probably for sure. They got him in the 2nd round. I know that there's also been some things that are arising off the court around him, but until, we have more information on that, I'll let that be its own thing.
Wait. Rewind. Which player is this?
Have you not heard this,
Have you
Rich?
not heard about the Kyle Filipowski thing?
Filipowski was getting groomed by a Mormon lady.
Yeah, his
Who-
girlfriend's like 28,
who-
with, like his babysitter, and like they started dating when he was like in high school, and she was
Who's
like,
like, yeah, she's like 8 to 10 years older than him, like made him cut off contact with his family.
Yeah.
His brother and his mom were both on Twitter talking about it the day of the second round. Like as the second round is happening about it.
Yep.
I did not
We're very
hear.
uncomfortable with this.
I did not hear any of this. So
She moved to Durham when he went to school there.
And he cut his family off. Like she was the only one with him at the draft, I believe. And like they started dating when he was still in high school, and she graduated college the same year I did, undergrad.
how old is she?
She's 28 now.
And he's 20?
21, 20.
Probably
Like
20,
20,
21.
maybe
20. 20.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were
it's
dating
kinda-
when he was 17
Yeah.
earlier.
It turned a lot of teams off by reports because he was very
Right.
like,
I knew that happened, but I didn't know why. And I just kind of like, when he got run into by that NC State crowd and he made such a big deal about it, I thought that was really weird and thought he sounded really whiny. And so I thought, and you also could see that he has a temper on the court. It's he almost is like gritting his teeth a lot of times, like he's gonna snap, but he doesn't. So I always had a sense there was something a little off about him, but I didn't know he was a Scientologist.
yeah, I mean,
a Mormon. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, like, all that aside, I mean, I think it's still great value in the second round. You get a guy who, like, again, all of that notwithstanding, was still one of the better bigs in college basketball and has elements to his game that will translate or that kind of fit today's NBA. Isaiah Collier, that whole USC team was obviously a disappointment, but not that long ago, we were talking about him being, if not the number one guard, like the number one player in this draft, and you got him basically at the very, very end, almost the last pick. And then I like Cody Williams. I mean, obviously, you see the pedigree. His brother ends up popping and doing very well in the NBA. Not saying that they're the same player, and he had some durability issues at Colorado, and that was a team that was definitely run by Simpson and De Silva. Like those were the alphas, and he was kind of filling in. But I mean, I think you just look at the value. They got 3 guys. All of them have a pathway and have a proven concept that they can work in the NBA. They might not have all performed at the highest level in college. Like, Filipowski didn't take the next steps. Collier disappointed. And I think Williams was really, so I think Williams at 10 that's where I would have been comfortable taking him. But I just think it was great value for them. All these guys, I think, make sense. And where they got them compared to where they were projected going either the start of this year or even last year in Filipowski's case, you can classify them as damn near steals.
Yeah, I think even if you throw Filipowski out, they still get close to an A, I think.
Yeah,
to me, they got 2 lottery level talents, and one of them nearly fell into the second round. That's a steal. That's the classification. To me, Collier was the steal of the draft. So I would still.
Why do we think he fell that far?
I don't know.
29.
I don't know. I was wondering. I didn't hear anything about bad interviews, but I thought about that. But I mean, he had. Trust me, early in the season, we were down on him. We didn't like his body language. He seemed to be all about himself. But when he came back from that injury, he looked like a totally different player. So I went from being really down on him to being like, okay, this guy not only looks like a pro, but now he's playing like a coachable, team-oriented guy. And I really like what I saw from him down the stretch. That team was a mess. Andy Enfield deserved to get, transferred to whatever SMU. He got fired. Andy Enfield got fired. Trust me. And so, I don't know. That team was pretty dysfunctional. But
I got 2 reasons potentially. I don't really know, but I would suspect his only He measured in at like 6'3.5", and he only has like a +1 wingspan. And then he really didn't test well with vertical explosion throughout the year. And then I think, is he really big enough to be a primary? Probably not. And he like really has to shoot well off the dribble, like really has to shoot well off the dribble. And then his advanced stats were just not great. Specifically shooting. Say what you want about the website, but Tankathon projects his NBA 3-point percentage to be 33% using whatever metrics they use. If he's a 33% NBA 3-point shooter, he's not an NBA player.
Yeah, it's Tyreek Evans.
Right.
Huh?
Tyreek Evans. Shorter.
Yeah, like, and yeah, not as big Tyreek Evans.
But we're talking about a smaller sample than average on a dysfunctional team.
It was a great pick, regardless.
And here's what I'll say about his height and vertical is that kid is so strong that it doesn't really phase him at the rim. He is one of these players. There was like a handful of players, and he would fall like maybe 5, 6 players to me that I went into the scouting process. And that's a lot what I did when I was down for the operation. I just watched film and film and film. And he was one of those guys that the stats didn't match the eye test. And he was one of them. He's just like, bro. I when I was watching tape, it reminded me of when I saw Terrence Shannon in person this year at Rutgers. I was like, oh my God, this guy is so much better than anybody on the court. He was just so much better, and you could see it more in person than you could see it on the TV. I don't know why. I don't know what that aspect was of being there, as opposed to maybe you could see more of the court and you get to see his speed compared to everybody else. I don't know what it was, but he just popped, and Collier to me pops in the eye test. All right.
Rich, would you have taken Collier over Devin Carter at 13?
I had him rated higher because of his age. I think Devin Carter's a better player now. I don't think Devin Carter's shot, he only had one good season of shooting well. So, but Devin Carter is a freak athlete. He has a freak wingspan, and he is such a hustler and scrapper.
But see, that's the thing. Like all of those things that you just said, I'd bet on Devin Carter over Collier.
Yeah.
Would you and then the conversation is him versus Carlton Carrington, which like Carrington is younger.
I definitely like Collier better than Carrington.
You do, but like that's the class, and then that drop from 14. Like there's not a ton of point guards lead guys going between.
No, there was a dearth.
And then so like that's
to me. Then you got into the Simpsons, from Colorado. There wasn't kind of like a huge gap between the top few, and then I think maybe I overrated Collier because of his upside compared to Carter. Because if I'm picking right now for the Sixers, I want Carter. But that's right now, so we always have to factor in what's it going to be, 3 years from now. All right. So, Caleb and, Cam both gave Memphis A-minuses. Drew gave them a C, and I know why, because Zach Edey was part of the draft, and I wasn't that much ahead of Drew. I gave them a B-. So we had a lot of mixed feelings. So if you average that all up, they basically get a B grade, but the way we did it, I'm not going to go into, trust me, it ended up that they were one of our top 4 teams that we were going to talk about on the show for doing well. So Caleb, you like what Memphis did?
I'll keep it pretty quick. I think right when we do draft grades, we're always trying to evaluate and like balance the value for where you get somebody in the draft, right? Like the draft position really matters. And so like you look at kind of their first pick with Edey at 9, unless they were going to trade up and give up some capital to get Klingon, I think that's kind of the best pick there. They're pretty like I just don't know how much playing time like somebody like Buzelis or Cody Williams is going to get. Even some of the other guards that in the early teens. I feel pretty agnostic on if Zach Edey is going to be an NBA player. I really don't know. I feel like we haven't seen a ton of guys like him, right? Like the comparisons are Boban and Yao. And Yao was a good NBA player and Boban was not. And I think like Edey's somewhere in between them. Like he's clearly better than Boban and he's probably not as good as Yao was. But I think getting that air with Jaren Jackson Jr., I think is going to be really interesting. I also think he probably will be more of a specific set piece. Like, I don't see him playing 30 minutes a game. I don't think they drafted him to play 30 minutes.
You don't think he's going to get as much playing time as, say, a Rudy Gobert?
Probably not. I think he's going to get, like, Memphis is really bad in the half court on offense, and I think they're going to use him at specific points where they need to get offensive buckets in the half court. Like, he can be a really good pick and roll player for Ja, and that's where I see them trying to use him, because especially with Jaren Jackson Jr. spacing out to the perimeter, some of the other guys they have being able to space out of the perimeter, and I'll lead that into their other two picks, getting Jalen Wells at 39 and Cam Spencer at 53. I love Cam Spencer at 53. I think he could be I think he's going to play. Maybe not year one. I just really like the body of work that he brings. I like the patience that he plays with. I think he's really smart. I think he's really crafty.
Another Peyton Pritchard?
I mean, I think he's probably a little bigger than Peyton Pritchard and probably not as athletic. So a little bit different of a game, but he is a knockdown shooter. He's a gamer. And then Jalen Wells is one of the better shooters in the draft. And so they looked at what they really need. They said, we need a big center to pair with Jaren Jackson Jr.'s, pair with Jaren Jackson, and we need shooters. And especially if you consider the value at where they drafted those guys, they got the guys that they need to make their team better.
You know, interesting story about Wells is, you know, he was a D2 star, and it's very rare for a D2 guy or, you know, to emerge to be a draft pick, you know, starting off in D2. And he really did not start the season very well. And then he popped in Pac-12 play. And I didn't have him on my draft board until about, halfway through the season. So January, somewhere in there, sometime in January, I'm watching a game. And in that game, he dominated in the mid-range, kind of like a Paul George, you know, with these mid-range, or Kawhi Leonard with all these mid-range jump shots. And I was, you know, and then I looked at his stats. I was like, oh, he could hit from deep too. And then, you know, Cam and I, when we did a mock draft for the site, you know, I also thought he was about 6'4", but turns out he measured 6'6" without shoes. So I probably had him a little underrated based on the fact that, you know, he came on, you know, a little late in the season. But Drew, you had a comment?
Well, Wells played in my neck of the woods, Sonoma State. I know a guy who played with him. His D2 time was spent out by me.
Sonoma's a big time program, you know, in D2, right? And
not really, not recently. No.
Well, I hear their name a lot. You know,
their conference is competitive. The CC2A conference is competitive. But recently, I don't recall them being super good. I'd have to look. I'm not.
By the way, I want to add while we're talking about D2, I have expanded our draft board. It's now well over 1,200. It's actually over 1,300 players, and it has about 30 D2 players because I took the time this year to look at the best D2 players, because you know why? Those guys might turn out to be a Jalen Wells, or they will definitely go over to Europe and find a job. So, and we do the site and we do some consulting for European teams. So I'm starting to expand into D2. Not a lot, but about 30 players. All right. So how about you, Cam? You liked Memphis. I personally, before you start, I'll just tell you, you know, what I didn't like was I thought they reached for Zach Edey because Klingon was gone. And I thought Zach Edey, I've been saying it, you know, all year, basically was going to be a late first rounder. And to see him go in the top 10 to me was kind of shocking. So I'll just
it shouldn't have been too shocking, Rich, because you and I debated this pick for a good 10 minutes.
We did.
When we did the mock draft.
Yeah, because they thought they wouldn't have Klingon, and would they take Edey? That's what we're talking about.
Didn't Vicini have him in the lottery for like 2 months? Like I feel like
but I don't look at those guys until I do collective I don't want to be influenced by other guys. You know,
But he's going from team. My point is, Vecini's going from team intel. Like he was
Yeah.
mocked
right. But my
based on
job,
team
my
intel
job
in the
is not
lottery.
to pick. My job is not to evaluate where these guys are going to go in the draft. My job is to evaluate who's the best players. You know, yeah, we do a mock draft, but we just do it for the fans' point of view. But when I watch Zach Edey, I don't give a rat's ass if he goes in the first round or is a two-way player. I want to. If I think he's the 30th best player, that's where I'm putting him. Kim?
Yeah, I ultimately, I think I was pretty in favor when we did our mock of having him go there, not just because I thought Memphis was going to go center, but I really do think that there's a possibility that Edey continues to be as good as he's been in college in the NBA.
Hmm.
And like at this point in the draft, yeah, there's some guys you could reach for, but again, on fit, Memphis doesn't need anything other than a center, not really. And Edey, I think, is
Well, you know,
pretty clearly the
they could
best
use
center
they
on the
could
board
use
at that
some
point.
depth. I mean, I don't think you want to go with Derrick Rose to be your only backup point guard. You know, especially since Ja's a little. Well,
Easier.
Ja can miss time for whatever reason. You know.
Yeah. I just think I think ultimately they didn't have another big. They were happy to play, and Edey's going to be able to give them 20 minutes a night right away. We'll see how good those 20 minutes a night are, but he can give it to you right away. Wells, I think, could end up being one of the steals of the draft. I'm
Possibly.
really high on Wells.
Yeah, we
I
debated
had
this
him,
when we did our mock. Yeah.
yeah, I had him in the first round on my board, which is probably a little excessive, but I think offensively, that dude has serious upside. He's got a great handle for a guy his size. Like I would say he has a more shooting guard like handle than most 6'6" wings. Really good shooter. And then with Cam Spencer, I mean, at the end of the draft, you know, if he turns out to be anything, it's a win.
Yeah.
I'm a little
I
down
love
on
Cam. I love Cam Spencer is a he. The reason why I keep on bringing Peyton Pritchard, he gives me that same vibe, that gamer vibe. You know, that hustler, that scrapper. You can
energy
maybe their
guy.
games aren't exactly the same, but you know, Cam Spencer can definitely make plays as a playmaker. He'll grab rebounds for you, and he's a tremendous shooter, and he's a clutch shooter. So you know, yeah. I'll take the last team that we had in our upper echelon, and that's Houston Rockets. And surprisingly, they only had one pick. But as I said earlier in the show, the reason why I didn't like Atlanta's draft so much, and the reason why I did like the Rockets draft so much, is because they basically got AJ Griffin for sending. Let's see, they sent pick 44, which turned out to be Pella Larson, to Miami for a guy who was almost a lottery pick and is only 20 years old. And basically, we haven't seen a good sample from him yet because he's been hurt a lot. And then they got Reed Shepherd at number 3 overall. That was about, you know, the draft got very iffy to me. My top 3 were Risa Shea, who went number 1, Sarr, who went number 2. My third was Ron Holland from the G League. Now, did Holland's statistics didn't really he was another one of those eye test guys for me. And then the draft got like, oh my God, you know, I could have seen Shepherd. I had Shepherd 4, but I could have foreseen Shepherd, you know, going, you know, 18 or as early as 4. You know, I mean, I thought those guys like between 4 and 18, anybody could go, you know, amongst that group, depending on what you wanted, who you liked when you interviewed them. To me, it was such a crapshoot. But Shepherd went that high. We talked about Reed Shepherd a lot during the season, how we loved his game, how we loved the way he contributed in multiple ways, that he was athletic and he was a tremendous shooter, over 50% from 3. Also a very good passer, not a flashy passer, but an efficient passer. Big time in steals and blocks. So if you watch his game, defensively, you will see some problems. He doesn't have a big wingspan, but he is athletic. But he definitely has a lot to learn on the defensive end. But the steals and blocks were there because of his athleticism. So and so that's why I personally liked Houston's draft. Any comments before we move on?
I think Reed was the guy that teams kind of wanted to take number one, or even honestly number two, and we're a little scared to. And so I think the value is great, and I also think like if you look at the fit, putting him next to Thompson in the backcourt with some big wings and Jabari Smith and Tari Eason, he's probably going to play second unit with Steven Adams behind him. You know, we talked about before the show, just you need a big guy to put your hands up. Like Steven Adams can do that. And so the fit in Houston is superb. And I'm like pretty excited to see like he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be an all NBA player, but I think he's going to be a great ancillary player.
Right. So the teams that we put in the next tier collectively were the Washington Wizards, Philadelphia 76ers, Los Angeles Lakers, New York Knicks, Toronto Raptors, and OKC Thunder. Drew, which one of these teams would you like to talk about?
I'll take the Raptors because they've got my alma maters, Jonathan Mogo from USF. They selected him in the second round, but I did give them. They were like my first team right into like the good to very good. So I think their draft was kind of defined by just like versatility. They covered so much ground with these picks. Like everything kind of is a little bit different. I think Jacoby Walter at 19 is good value. I know the efficiency wasn't really there, but I think like the blueprint when you watch him play for like a 3-and-D 6'5" wing, I think he measured with a 6'10" wingspan is there. And so at 19, you get a guy that fits kind of the modern NBA prototype who, you know, did have success at Baylor. I think is great. He can grow alongside a young team. I think Mogo is one of the most interesting prospects in this draft, just from a standpoint of like he's 6'6", but he's a freak athlete. I think he dunks everything, but doesn't shoot. Like he's just a very interesting piece. I know he played very well and he flew up boards because he played well at the combine. He tested well athletically. I do think like in a world where Draymond Green is proven, if you have guard skills and can kind of be an offensive hub that can't shoot but can make the right plays, has the upside to defend, there's a place for you in the NBA. And I mean, Toronto is, you know, led by a guy in Scotty Barnes that's kind of a, you know, plug and play almost anywhere. I think Mogo can kind of fit that mold as well. Not as polished offensively. Mogo's gonna have a soft spot for Jamal Shed. But I also think what comes with that is the trade that was tied to that is where they got the most value. This is a team that is clearly like kind of in the early stages of a rebuild. You know, Scotty Barnes gets his deal. They're going to, you know, kind of make him the flagship player. But they got Davion Mitchell. They got that second rounder from the Blazers. And then who else did they got somebody? Didn't they get somebody else in that pick?
Sasha
Vesnikov.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like Mitchell and Shed are kind of redundant as players, in my opinion, in terms of like what they do. They're kind of the same guy. Like,
but we're talking about somebody who just a couple of years ago went number 9 in the draft. Now he is 25 years old.
Yeah.
But they thought enough of Sacramento thought enough of him to make him a top 10 pick. A lot of people back in that draft, I remember it because I said they were insane, called him a top 5 pick.
I think that was the recency bias. That was the year they won the national championship. And,
right.
You know, he had that, you know, he did a great job against Suggs in that game. It was, you know,
we had Mitchell on our draft board about number 20 that year.
So those players are kind of redundant, but I think a scrappy leader, second unit kind of guy, there's value there. I'm not very familiar with who they took last, the 57th.
Comchi?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar, so I won't.
He's an 18-year-old. He was the youngest draft prospect, period. You know, he just played at NBA African Academy, had a little bit of pro experience in the African League. He hasn't had a ton of playing time. He's very raw prospect, but he's moves his feet well. He's got good mobility, can shot block, can rebound, can shoot a little. And my favorite trait about him, like Mobo, is his passing. He's a very underrated 7-foot passer. Cam, I know you love this draft more than anybody. You gave Toronto an A+. Do you want to add to what Drew's saying?
A big part of it. I love the trade. First off, incredible. I mean, we talked about Vezenkov, even preseason being one of the guys that could push the Kings up in the West.
Yeah.
Because
they needed somebody at that position too.
Yep. Great shooter. We didn't see a whole lot of him with the Kings. Probably a defensive, liability in some ways, but to get all of that for just Jalen McDaniels, the lesser of the McDaniels brothers,
right?
Great.
The older of the McDaniels brothers too.
Oh yeah, probably got him beat by a minute or two.
No, they're not twins.
They're not twins.
No. This Jalen, I think it's 2 years older.
Oh. Yeah, then that's even crazier. I thought they were twins the whole time.
No.
Oh yeah, crazy trade. It's a little tough for Jamal Shed, but because he's probably going to be behind Davion Mitchell. But anyway, I like Magbo. I think the upside with him could be really, really interesting if he can find his shot. But even as is, I think he can kind of be your Precious Achua. He can be your Kenneth Faried build. Just a guy that brings some energy, some defense, and I like his ball handling.
And this team was really bad at rebounding, and Mobo can rebound, along with all the other good things he does. Do you guys realize though he almost became the third first-round draft pick that was on the show? Baylor Shireman, Dylan Jones, and he missed it with pick 31. So he leads off the second round. We had other guys that were drafted that were on the show. And we had other guys that are signing two-way contracts that were on the show.
Jalen Williams, too, yeah. Did you list Jalen Williams?
Well, that was a couple.
I'm
talking about this draft. I'm just talking about this draft.
Yeah. Get back to it. I really like Jacoby Walter. I think, he started out the college season hot, and I think that showed, what he could be offensively. And he was considerably higher on people's boards around January or so. But the thing I really like about him, and I think I kind of underrated in his game in my own board, he's a really good defender. He's got length. He can protect the rim a little bit in transition if he needs to. And I think he can probably defend 1 through 3, especially if he adds a little bit more weight to him. So, to get him at 19,
everybody wants. Like everybody wants his build and what he projects to be. Like is what people will spend top 5 picks on, which is why I think the value is insane.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah, I agree.
And to me, Comche is just the cherry on top. I mean, he could be absolutely nothing, but I really, really like that guy's game. He can shoot a little bit. He's long. And I think probably the thing that he needs to work on the most to kind of connect his game is ball handling right now and getting a little bit bigger. But I think the potential with that dude is kind of scary. But he's really young, so he's definitely a project.
He definitely has a long way to go.
I just love too, like they got a little bit of everything. They got a project, they got an experienced guard, they got a big who's just an athlete, might be able to slot in, don't know. And then they got a highly touted pick too. So
right.
I loved what they did.
So Caleb, out of this second tier group, what team would you like to talk about?
What's the list again?
It is Washington, Philadelphia, Los Angeles Lakers, New York Knicks, and OKC.
Ooh, there's a couple of teams. My sneaky good draft I think was OKC, but I think I'll spend a couple minutes on the Wizards, the almost Bullets, because I actually did, like, as I've looked at their draft more, I think I gave them a B- for those listening. I think I would probably go up to like a B+, maybe almost join Rich in that like A- B+ range. For a couple of reasons. While Sar was, I think, a really good pick at that second spot, I think the reason I knocked them was I don't think Sar's going to be a all-NBA player. but like I don't know how many of these top 5 picks will be.
Right.
Right, like probably none, if we're being honest. But I do
I think
he's
Shea has a chance to be an all-star.
strong disagree, but that's okay. Yeah, I think Sar could be a really good player, a really good role player. Again, like how many 7-footers are there that can catch the ball, run the floor, be big? I think he needs to work on being more physical. He's not as good of a big as he like is probably he wants to be a 3 or a 4. But I think he has time and space to develop, which could be interesting. I also like the trade that they made. We've kind of incorporated trades in a lot of this. They sent Denny Advia to Portland.
Yeah, don't you think they fleeced Portland a little there?
I mean, I don't know. I think Advia could be really good. I think he's a really good two-way wing. I don't know why Portland is trading for him. Like,
I think defense. They want defense.
yeah, they're not close to contending, and I think he's gonna have the best. He's really gonna be best on a contending team where his like two-way talents are really helpful and really useful. I don't know if Portland's at a place to contend yet. I love the Bub Carrington pick. I know he was Rich. He's been divisive for Rich all season, but I think he's just a really, really, really good pass and shoot threat. And I know early in the seasons we had conversations around his ability to one like get to the rim, but two to like finish at the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you watch the tape and you like listen to some of the interviews, I think he can get to the rim well. I do think it's like a mental thing for the finishing. If you look at like some of his bio, he was 6'1" as a senior. And his junior year, he was 5'10", and then now he's 6'5".
Right.
And so like I've heard interviews where he talked about up until basically he played in college, finishing at the rim just like wasn't an option. He played in one of the best high school leagues in the country. If you're 5'10", you're gonna have to be Kyrie to finish at the rim with that. And so I think with his frame and with his strength, I think he can really learn to finish. Like I think the touch is evident. I would love to see them give him the keys. Like I think him and Sar could be a really interesting like pick and roll threat if he can get some of that like lob into the floater action that like Luka and Trey and some of those guys have. I also really like the Keyshawn George pick. Like I think we talk about value. I think there were some guys that had him. I saw some places that had him higher than where he got drafted, but he's just another late bloomer. He grew up basically being a lead guard at like 6'3", 6'4", and then now he's 6'8", and so really has some guard skills as a wing that potentially has some like two-way guard 3-4 people optionality, which I think could be interesting. So again, folding in the trades, folding in who they got. I don't really know if they got an All-NBA guy. I actually think Carrington probably has the most potential to be the best player of their picks. But for a
He's
team
also, I believe, younger than Sar. I believe
he's probably the second youngest pick in the draft.
Yeah,
or third youngest pick
of all the prospects. Like if you look at our board on the site, top 200, I think he was like the 4th or 5th youngest. But here's what I wanted to say about Carrington. You know, I had him in second round territory most of the season. I moved him up significantly during film study. You know why?
Why?
Defense. He really gets after it on defense. Something I really didn't notice when just watching the games. You know, he really does play defense tenaciously, and I was like, wow. Still, I still have concerns about his playmaking and, of course, his finishing. His driving game, but still, I moved him up to about mid-20s, low 20s, somewhere in there. I think he was 23. So I already mentioned the Knicks. So and they were one of the busiest teams in the draft, and so I'd like to mention them before we move on to the teams we didn't like. And the Knicks were just so trading this and trading that, but they ended up with Pacome Dadier Tyler Kolek, Kevin McCullough, who's still injured, and Ariel Huckporty, center from Germany, who played in Australia the last 2 seasons. And it wasn't so much who they came away with, but it's the way they kind of maneuvered and kept on like garnering picks and so forth and so on. But here's the thing. I loved Dadier. He, to me, was a potential lottery pick. Again, one of those guys that doesn't pop because statistically, but eye test, man, this guy could be an offensive star, and he's not a bad defender either, and also very young. So I just thought that he could have been a lottery pick, very much like Richeche. You know, they have a lot of similarities in their size and athletic ability and what they can do and what they can't do. In fact, I think Dadier is a better offensive player. I think Richeche is a better defender. But Dadier is very dynamic, very explosive, has a lot of moves in his bag. So I think he even shot better from 3. I'd have to verify that. But anyway, really like what the Knicks are doing. And as a Sixers fan, it's scary as all get up for me. It's bad enough the Celtics are dominating. Now we got the Knicks that are looking like a dominant team as well. So
it's going to feel bad when the Knicks are good with a bunch of players that played college ball in
Philadelphia.
That's hard. That hurts, man.
Yeah, and especially
power of friendship,
because they had Mikal Bridges, and they gave him away for a guy who's no longer in the league.
Zaire Smith, did he ever play a minute?
Well, you know what? He had a horrible allergic reaction to seafood in his rookie season. And if you've ever had one of those anaphylactic things, they actually put him out for the year. And then when he's come back, he really hasn't gotten a shot. He gets a 10-day contract here, maybe a summer league contract here, but he's just never really recovered from that. I don't know. I doubt it's still a physical issue. I know my grandfather had one of those bad reactions, anaphylactic reactions, and put him down for 6 months. He lost 6 months of work. So yeah. All right. So let's talk about our crap teams. And who's talked the last? I guess, Drew, you haven't talked for a while. So here's the options. We actually have 5, but we're definitely not going to talk about Brooklyn because they had no picks. So we have to give them an F. We have Milwaukee, Golden State, which is kind of low-hanging fruit here because they only had 1 pick. Charlotte Hornets and Dallas Mavericks. Again, Dallas only had 1 pick. So, Drew, I mean, why don't you, if you want to take Golden State, why don't you talk about who they selected and also where they're doing in free agency? Because I think it's kind of low-hanging fruit. If you start off with the 53rd pick and that's all you're going to come away with, obviously you're not going to do great in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it is low hanging. Like, I don't want to like poo-poo Quentin Post in terms of like what you can see. Like, when you watch him play, he's a legitimate threat from 3. Like, you can see the blueprint of why this guy's on an NBA radar, why this guy can get a shot. But again, I think it's relative to the team. Like, I don't know. I just don't. This one's really hard because I kind of think no matter who they took here, given that it was as late in the draft as it was, they were kind of relegated to like C at best territory. They weren't going to go get a super big impact guy. I mean, everything the Warriors they're doing is tied to free agency.
Can I throw this out there? Here's the best guys on our draft board that didn't get drafted. So these are options they could have taken. Trey Alexander from Creighton, Judah Mintz from Syracuse, Reese Beekman of Virginia, PJ Hull of Clemson, who's a lot like Post, like Post in a lot of ways. Defali Dante, who is, a more old school type of center, but you can make an argument he has a better chance to make it than Post.
Hall is the one that sticks in my craw.
And another Pac-12 player, Keyshawn Johnson of Arizona, the athletic forward.
I mean, I'm not really offended with them skipping out on the higher profile guards just because like that's kind of where the Warriors' bread is buttered as it stands. They didn't need another kind of like wing guard player. They needed a big. I would have much preferred Hall, just based again on the pedigree, the level of competition. He gives them, in my opinion, he's just a more physical. Because the Warriors have been hunting for this big to fill this spot for a long time. A lot. I mean, you look at all their drafts. I think they're constantly taking bigs. I mean, Wiseman was a flop. I still believe Trace is going to end up being potentially the steal of that draft relative to where he was taken last year. But like, they're still trying to fill that big man spot. They're always looking, and you name Dante. I love as a college player. I don't know how much he works in the pros, but like Hall to me is much big. I would have, if I had to take a flyer, I would have taken a flyer on Hall. Or yeah, Keyshawn Johnson, who I know athletically doesn't have the same size, but athletically he has an NBA strength and athleticism. So, I mean, I can see the outline. Like I see the vision, right? You get a 7-footer who can legitimately space the floor. You know, the counting stats themselves were, solid. It's not like he didn't put up any numbers and, you just took a flyer on a guy because he's tall. But I just,
You also could have
Warriors-
taken 19-year-old Trenton Flowers, who yes, he had a horrible year in Australia, but he's 19. He's barely 19, and he's super athletic. He has some lead guard capability at 6'7" or 6'8", whatever he is. Why not take a flyer on him?
I think this is going to be a pick we look back at, and it's just the Warriors offseason as a whole. I think they are going all in. I think they've tried to do this 2 timelines thing for the last 3 years. It's not working. I think they're just saying, screw it. The wagon is hitched to Steph. We're getting this guy as much active help right now that can suit up. And I think that's where they're going. I'm not even saying that to Quentin Post. I just think I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved. If he gets like packaged in some deal.
Well, he already has been. They traded that pick away and then they got it back.
Yes. Okay, I'm saying I will not be shocked if he's out in a deal to go try to get Larry Markin in or Buddy Hield. So I think the Warriors are hard. They're almost in that Brooklyn Nets, just the way they're operating. It's very clear on all their offseason moves. It is about getting guys who are ready to play right now, proven contributors that are going to help Steph Curry chase a ring. And Quentin Post in no world is ready to do that. It's not, even if the Warriors were in a full rebuild, he probably wouldn't be. He'd be a G League. He's not a rotation guy. So it's like kind of one of those, like I said, low hanging fruit. It's a D because what more do you want? I agree they could have taken a better player, but I think regardless of whoever they took here was going to get moved anyways. So for the Warriors' sake, it almost doesn't even matter. It's almost like an NA or they didn't pick because I would be shocked if this player is still suiting up for them. And I don't mean that. I'm not saying Post has no shot. It's just.
No, I hear you. He's just not. He's not even close to a needle mover.
Yeah.
So Cam, I think it was pretty much almost unanimous that I don't think anybody liked Milwaukee's draft, even though they had 2, let's say, high ceiling picks. But why don't you talk about the Bucks? You graciously. As you do, we call you the softie when it comes to grades. You gave them a C. Drew gave them a D. I gave them a D+, and Caleb gave them a flat out F.
So, I mean, it comes down simply to, where the Bucks are at. You would expect for them to get some more ready-made NBA players in the draft. There were some guys available, especially at 23, that, I imagine people I was shocked to see that they passed on a few guys at that position. I mean, even Collier, I thought Collier would have been good for them there. But yeah, I mean, the problem is you can't really deny that AJ Johnson and Tyler Smith have pretty good potential ratings.
They're both excellent athletes.
Yep, excellent athletes.
And great size. Great size.
Yep, great size for their positions. I like AJ Johnson as like a potential ball handler primary. I think his ceiling is really high. Tyler Smith, I'm a little bit lower on. I think people got kind of enamored with him with the shot making early in the G League season, and that fell off really quickly.
Yeah.
But the big thing is like the Bucks need guys that can fit their rotation right now, and they did not get those guys.
No.
I think in the long term it could work out for them, but right now they're competing for championships or want to, and they could have gotten some talent to help them out here, and they missed on that.
Yeah. Now, what is interesting is both of these guys played professional basketball last year, both Johnson and Smith. Johnson was horrible. He only got 8 minutes a night. And his statistics were just anemic. Though at the combine, not only did he blow everybody away in the athletic testing, but he also played pretty well in the games. The biggest question mark is his shooting, but his size, playmaking is there. And what I most like about him is his defense. I think he could be a lockdown defender. Tyler Smith, on the other hand, as you said, he was really hot at the beginning of the season, kind of cooled off, especially when Bucelis, got kind of more in the rotation. They kind of play the same position, though and so he went to the bench. Smith doesn't do anything really to match up with his size. He's not a great shot blocker. He's not a great rebounder, but he's a lefty and he has a pretty lefty jump shot. He also doesn't finish well around the rim. If he can't dunk it, there's about a 50-50 chance he's going to miss the layup. And that's statistics. The statistics say that. He makes layups like at a 55% rate. So yeah, I mean, I looked at both of these guys a lot because when I was recovering from surgery, and I like the upside, but yeah, definitely not good picks for the Bucks. And also, here's the other thing: is really you had to take Johnson at 23. You couldn't have taken Johnson at 33 and maybe somebody else at 23. I mean, I was shocked to see Johnson go that high in the draft. 33, no. 23.
AJ Johnson was shocked to see himself go that high in the draft.
Yeah.
He didn't have a blue room. Like, he didn't have a table.
Right.
I didn't think he was getting drafted that night. He just wanted to show up just in case.
Yep. All right, so we'll end the teams we didn't like their draft with the Charlotte Hornets, and I'll talk about them a little. The Hornets, to me, have not been not a great run organization. They took Tijan Salon at number 6. Now, I know a lot of people were high on this guy. I wasn't one of them. He didn't pop out to me when I studied film on him. Statistically, there's a things that I don't like about it. He's very much a jump shooter, and 60% of his possessions this year were jump shots. His handle needs to tighten up. It's not elite, and I wasn't crazy about his defense. I just thought that he was a project along with the guys we just got talking about with the Bucks. And at number 6, okay, maybe teams liked him and couldn't have gotten him much lower, but I don't care. I would have not taken this guy until the late first round. There were a lot of other Europeans, including Dadier, that I liked better. And so I thought that was a horrible pick. And generally, I'm just looking at the collective grade by the group. Caleb gave them a C-, the Hornets, that is. I gave him a D+, Drew gave him a D, and Cam, once again, gives the most favorable grade of a C+. I like KJ Simpson at 42. I thought that was about where he would be drafted. I really think he's a very dynamic player and also can make plays. I think he could be a very, very good backup point guard in the NBA. And I'm not saying Salon can't be a good player, but he's too much of a project for me to take him at number 6. That's the thing. I would have taken him earliest, late teens, earliest. And if he would have slipped to like pick 28 or 29, I wouldn't have been surprised. But he didn't. So we will see who's right, the Hornets or me. But personally, I don't like this pick. I think it's a very risky pick.
Historically, it's probably Rich. If we're going off of history, there's a good bet that it's probably going to be used right on this one.
Right. So, and you guys have any other comments about the draft before we wrap things up?
I love that pick. Personally, that's why I read.
Oh, that's right. You were really high on him. You were super high on him.
Salon was 3rd on my board.
Wow.
I think in I don't know. You kind of have to grade these guys in a vacuum of like what's the ceiling truly? Like what can you project out in their game? To me, I think he has the highest ceiling of any player in this draft.
Wow.
Genuinely. He's already a good shooter. My thing is they could have gotten him lower, and
Yeah.
it's pretty clear that they had a deal with Memphis on the board so that Memphis could move up to take Klingon. I feel like Charlotte was scared that the Spurs were not going to pass on Salon at 8. And so they didn't want to do the deal with Memphis and end up not getting their guy. I don't know. I think they ended up just saying, screw it, let's take him at 6. But the one team, I didn't rate them low enough when we did our ratings. I hated what Denver did with Holmes, trading up for Holmes, I think.
Yeah. I thought they gave up way too much. Another first round draft pick that was on our show. Yeah, I thought they gave up too much just to move up. Yeah, go on.
I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't be there at 28 to begin with.
Well, we had him in that position on our draft board. We had him around between 20 and 25. I don't remember exactly where.
I mean, we had a hard time with the mock figuring out if he was even a first rounder. I mean, I know, like, granted, with all of the intel, it's basically been clear that Denver promised Holmes for the past 2 months in the first round. And I don't know, it seems like their front office kind of got finessed because they gave him a promise. And then it turns out, oh, well, you know, Phoenix is willing to take him at 22. Oh, I guess we got to trade something to go get him. I don't know. It's just, it seems like, usually I like what Denver does in the draft, and they really fell off this year.
How does that crap get out? Who the hell runs their mouth, and how do they save their job? And I'll tell you why. I know one of the assistant general managers on the Denver Nuggets, and I'll be damned if he gives me anything remotely close to any hints of who he's liking in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you get screwed. And it seems like they did because everybody knew that he was going there.
Right.
And I still have questions about whether or not he's really a first round prospect. So
like I said, we had him between 20 and 25 on our draft board. So, I know other people were lower, but I thought he was a first round draft prospect. He's really shown a lot of improvement over the years, especially as a shooter. And he was on our show. So if you're on our show, you're golden. You're going to be a first round draft pick. We've proven it this year. So, all right. So let's move on. We didn't talk about the NBA championship. We all thought it was going to come down to the Celtics and Nuggets, and actually more of us picked the Nuggets in our playoff contest than the Celtics. I don't know if you got my text last night about the scoring. I actually thought the teams who picked the winner should get an extra 10 points, which would actually influence the contest.
Yeah, but spoiler alert, Drew won.
Okay. All right. There we go. That's what I wanted to know.
Drew won?
Drew won. Wow.
Yeah.
Did I don't.
How could he win? He wasn't in it. He wasn't in it.
I didn't participate.
Wait, I think it looks to me like Peter won.
Oh, that's Peter. Sorry.
It looks like Peter won.
I thought that was Drew's.
No, that's Pete's picks, and you finished second, right, Cam?
Yeah, I think I did just off of my first round.
But Pete was
Cam won, right?
No, because if we accept, we didn't think this out, and we gave the same number of points to picking the runner up, right, as the winner, and that didn't make any sense. So if we give the extra 10 points, Pete wins. Doc and Pete were the only two to pick the Celtics. The rest of us had the Nuggets. But Cam did well enough along the way to earn enough points. He had the Celtics as the runner-up and the Nuggets as the winner, as did I.
I was struggling a little bit there.
Doc was struggling overall, but he did pick the correct winner, which I suppose matters the most. All right, so that wraps up our NBA discussion for the day. And so I want to say, as we wrap up season 3, for season 4, we're going to take a more streamlined approach. We're going to emphasize guests more. And we want to be a show where tomorrow's stars, whether it be in Europe or in the NBA, we talk to them, we get to know them, and we have some fun with them too. So not just get the same old cliche answers. We're going to try to bring out some interesting stuff from them, so and get them to have a laugh with us. So, and at the same time, we plan to refocus on the Hoops Prospects website by providing more content, and I think everyone's going to like the changes. Any comments, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think some of the changes we have coming down the line, like, Rich and I have been talking a lot behind the scenes about like what's going to be best for us as a group, what's going to be best for the website. I'm really excited for some of the things that we got coming down the line. It's going to be an experiment, but I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be fun to make too. So I'm looking forward to it, boys.
It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be good holistic content. It's going to put, stuff into writing so people can kind of find out what we're saying, and in a fun way we can hold each other accountable on things, on takes and whatnot. And I'm super looking forward to it. And it's going to give us an opportunity to really, I think, also dive into the stuff we really want to dive into. I know, Rich, we've talked about, given work and everything, it's hard when I'm working college basketball season, but like, me, I'll always cover the WCC and the Mountain West just because those are my conferences, and RIP the Pac-12. But I think there's going to be really fun stuff coming down the pipe.
Yeah. It's funny because if you look on our draft board, the Pac-12, I think, had the most draft prospects in our top 200. I think they had like 21, SEC had like 20, and everybody else trailed those two conferences. Interesting that we're no longer going to have that conference. And one thing is, speaking about the website, I will be posting later this week, hopefully tomorrow, all of our draft grades, kind of a summary of what we talked about. And so you can check them out, where we ranked, probably put them in order of where we graded them. And so you can check that out on what we thought, all 4 of us. And so as always, I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank all our special guests that we had this season, many of whom were drafted, for joining us. And if you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We are going to be back in 3 weeks with a special guest, and we will talk about NBA free agency, Summer League, which will conclude on the 22nd or 23rd of July. And we're going to come back right about that day, and also preview the Olympics, which will start really soon after Summer League. So we'll have a lot to talk about when we get back. And any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Cam, you got that Dalton Connect jersey on the way?
What's that?
Cam's going to look really good in that Lakers purple when he gets that Dalton jersey.
The Lakers, I thought that was a perfect pick for a team that wants to contend. For a team that wants to contend, and I think they got him at 17. I thought that was kind of a steal.
Perfect, yeah.
I loved it so much I hated it.
Yeah, yeah. That pick almost, if that was their only pick of the draft, I probably would have given them damn near. It would have been close to an A, maybe. If that was the only
I still gave him an A-.
I think I gave him a B+. So
I think I did. I think I gave him a B or B+. Like, I still loved it.
Right. I didn't like the nepotism at the end of the second round. So, but I guess you can argue if AJ Johnson could go 23, Bronny James can go 57. So, yeah. All right, folks. We will see you in a few weeks. Enjoy July the 4th.